Have you ever experienced a God wink? You know, the kind of experience you know without a shadow of a doubt that God stepped in and gave you a big old wink from heaven. I'm your host, Cindy Spar, broadcasting from Office Evolution in Troy, Michigan. I am the founder of My Collective Network and My Christian Business Network, two amazing business networking organizations. I am a firm believer that there is power in sharing God wink stories. Think of it as a way for people to shine their light on Jesus, one wink at a time. In Matthew 5:14, it says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." All right, everyone, welcome back to the God Wink podcast. I'm your host, Cindy Spar, and I am so delighted to have Tabitha Mendez on with us today. I was actually introduced to Tabitha through a mutual friend, Steve Anderson from the Callisto group. We'll give him that little plug, Tabitha, in the beginning. It's as much as Steve gets. But I would just love to introduce you, Tabitha. Share with our listeners a little bit about you.
So my name is Tabitha Mendez. I am the president and CEO of Savvy Advertising Solutions. We are downtown Detroit's only full-service advertising agency, right down in the heart of the city on Macomb Street, and also have an office. We just had our grand opening and ribbon cutting to celebrate our 25th anniversary in advertising for our new office in Grosse Pointe.
Congrats. It's amazing. Well, Tabitha, you have quite the story, as you were sharing with me, coming all the way down to so many God winks. But can you just take us back to like how you grew up, like when you were a kid? What was it like, and what drew you into now what you are doing as a career?
So I was born and raised in Southwest Detroit, Verna Springwell's, literally the streets. I attended Vinewood Church of Christ from the time I was 9 years old. And by the time I was 15, I was a Sunday school teacher. And we lived in a home, you know, it's kind of like wild animals. There wasn't a lot of structure. We grew up very humble beginnings, very poor, dilapidated. And I actually left home at 15 years old due to the physical abuse, sexual, emotional, mental abuse. And I literally was living on the streets in my car in Southwest Detroit, and somehow managed to graduate high school, Southwestern High School, in 1991, and started a family by the time I was 20 years old, pregnant with my first son, and had my first son at 21. But prior to that, I had a little girl, Kristen Fior, my sweet girl, who I took in when I was 20 years old. So she was my first before my biological children. I had bought my first house when I was 18. So I started early. So I was a little more advanced and more responsible than, kids my own age growing up. And so I was raising a daughter, at 20 years old. And I now have 3 children. My daughter's 33. My oldest son is 30, Jacob, and my youngest son, Christian, is 20. He's going to be 27 here in December.
Wow. Well, you shared with me all along. I mean, it was pretty rough when you were younger. I was shocked when you said, at one point a pool was your way of bathing, right? Like you just did whatever you had to do given the situation.
So it was not necessarily a pool, but it was Patton Park, and they had a pool there. So I love swimming. So I would go there and swim, and they had a ladies' locker room, which I would use. And so it was right on Verner and Oh gosh, the street slips me now. Woodmere, by Woodmere Cemetery, which is where I would drive in and leave my car and sleep overnight. It was actually an accident that I ended up sleeping at Woodmere Cemetery. I was visiting my grandfather, and I was just in tears. I was going through a lot, and being shot at, and with AK-47s and 9mm. It was a crazy time. There were a lot of gangbangers at the time, Latin Counts, D Kings, Cash Flow Posse. It was a really, really tumultuous time, and the gangs had just started forming in the early 90s, and they went through the end of the 90s, and many of them were either killed or locked up. But I was visiting my grandfather, and I was just heartbroken, at wit's end, and I was just over his grave, crying and just asking for guidance and praying to God. And just when I left, I realized I had overstayed, and so they closed the gate, so I was locked in. And it suddenly occurred to me that this was a safe place. This wasn't a bad place. I had waterfront property. There was a beautiful there still is a beautiful weeping willow tree there. And so I would drive over and drive to the very end where there was no traffic. There was very little traffic, in case, I didn't know if there was security. I never ran into anyone. But I would, drive off in the back where they kind of kept all the supplies. But then in the morning I would drive to the pond, and I would do my prayers there. And it was just a special place. It's the most beautiful place in Southwest Detroit. I cannot believe such beautiful nature exists, all kinds of birds and ducks and stuff that you don't see right outside the gate. So it was pretty wild. So once I was locked in, I said, why not just stay here? So it was my goal every evening to get there before they locked the gate, so that I could sleep in my car and be safe. And I would get up in the morning, go to Patton Park, where they had the pool. They had lockers and showers, and I would take my showers, and then I would drive to Southwestern High School, where I attended high school. And so I was enrolled in this program called DECA, Distributive Education Clubs of America. And it allowed me to get a half a day off out of high school so that I can go work. It was a work program. And so my marketing teacher, he said, Tabitha, you're going to do really well in this industry. You're going to do great in advertising. And I said, oh, Mr. Mahalik, I hate, loathe, despise advertising. I will never be in advertising. And he said, well, why are you in my class? I said, because I need to work so I can buy eggs, milk, and tortillas. I got to eat. So it wasn't long after that, I ended up getting an apartment with my boyfriend, and he moved out of his mother's home and moved in with me. And we shared an apartment on 23rd Street, right in the heart of Mexican Town. And so we just, kind of did the best we could with the best of our ability. And somehow through the grace of God, I ended up graduating high school. And then after high school, I moved to Mexico for a short term, very short term. I thought it was going to be forever. And I became homesick right away. And just being around all the families there, it was so beautiful. And I just wanted that so badly. And I thought, well, maybe I'll come back and give my mom another chance and see if things have changed. And so it was just so beautiful that, every Sunday we would all walk to church together. They called me Güera Linda, which in Spanish is beautiful white girl. And beautiful white girl, yeah. And so it just touched me. It's one of those pivotal points in my life that really changed my outlook and the way that I viewed life and the way that life could be for me. And so I came back, and I was driving down the street, and I saw a sign that said free money. So it was, at the time it was called Detroit College of Business. It is now called Davenport University. So I go inside, I fill up this application for this free money, which, I'm from Southwest Detroit. I know nothing is free, but I'm just at wit's end. I'm desperate. I don't have any money. I'm trying to figure things out. I realized that I can work 3 jobs and make little money, or maybe I can go to college and make more money so I don't have to work so hard. And so I filled up the application, and this was before computer days, before, cell phone days. And so they're like, oh, great. Congratulations. You have a grant, like walk across the street and sign up for classes. I'm like, what? It was that easy? Like, why wasn't I told this in high school? Why wasn't I prepped for this? Like, I mean, now that I look back, it's like, okay, somebody wasn't doing their job at the high school, right? Even though I had a great experience in high school, I just feel that maybe it was hard for the teachers that, there was so much dilapidation and so many challenges with the students. Maybe it was a lost cause. I'm not sure, but there were some great teachers. And certainly my marketing teacher, Mr. Mahalik, was one of those people who was an incredible person and a huge influence on my life. And I'm very grateful for him and some of the other teachers there. That was, my guidance. But anyway, so I started taking these classes, and lo and behold, guess what Davenport University was back then when it was Detroit College of Business? It was business and marketing. So here I am taking these marketing courses again. And like the universe is just leading me and pushing me in advertising and marketing. And so now for 25 years, I've owned an advertising agency. So kind of interesting. I always say it doesn't matter what you want or where you want to be. It's where God wants you to be. And honestly, like, I love what I do. I can imagine doing other things, but I could never imagine not doing advertising. I really do love what I do. And if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
True. Absolutely true. Well, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. But when we come back, Tabitha, I would just love for you to share with our listeners your near-death experience, because that was really, really gave me goosebumps hearing what had happened. So listeners, we will be right back in just a quick second.
Hey, Godwink fam, this is Bailey Knuth from Trust Design Agency, and if you're a business owner in Michigan, this message is for you. Running a business can feel overwhelming, especially when you're trying to stay true to your mission. At Trust Design Agency, we understand how important it is to have a website that not only looks great, but reflects your brand's heart and brings in clients. As a special thank you to the Godwink fam, we're offering you a free personalized website audit to help you take your online presence to the next level. Plus, you'll get 15% off your next project with us, whether it's full website redesign, branding, or graphic design support. Click the link in the description or visit trustdesignagency.com/Godwink to book your audit and claim your discount. And don't wait, this offer is exclusive to Godwink listeners. At Trust Design Agency, we combine creativity with strategy to help your business thrive. Click the link in the description or visit trustdesignagency.com/Godwink today to get started.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Godwink podcast. We are excited to hear from Tabitha, a near-death experience that she went through. So Tabitha, tell our listeners a little more about that.
So it's kind of crazy. For the last 10 months, I've been having seizures, and I wasn't sure why. And they were few and far between, like maybe once a month, once every couple of months it started off. And then they seemed to kind of get, closer together. And so I really wasn't paying much, attention because I was so busy with work and we were in our peak season and I was just trying to stay focused. We had just won a big order from the Detroit Zoo, a big contract with them. And so we had a lot going on. So I was trying to stay focused on that. And, the whole thing, teach what you preach. I always tell people, you know what, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So I'm really good at giving advice. I'm not always good at taking my own advice. But lo and behold, we had just had our 25th anniversary. And my companion and I had plans to go to Put-in-Bay for the Bash on the Bay. And there was like 6 country artists. It was a big deal. We had $600 worth of VIP tickets. And I said, you know what? I just don't have the health. I feel it. I'm going to listen to my body and I'm going to sit this one out. If you'd like to go to with your son, I understand. And he said, you know what? We both have been working hard. Why don't we just go to our condo in Florida in Delray Beach? I said, you know what? That's great. That sounds great. I just need some R&R. I just need to recover, from this big event we just had. So we go to Florida and I'm having a great time. It's very relaxing. It's a very chill environment. We are 2 blocks from the beach or 2 blocks from town. So if we want to go, see the action and the fun, it's only a 2-block walk, and the ocean is only a 2-block walk. So it was about 11 o'clock at night. We had just arrived back from dinner, had a beautiful dinner, very relaxing evening. And we walked to the beach and everything was fine. Like I was actually feeling, because it was day 3. So I was actually starting to refresh and renew. And because we had chilled so much, and we walked to the beach. As soon as we arrived, I noticed how beautiful and full the moon was. And every time I see the moon, I think of my grandfather, who passed in 1980. He was shot and killed here in Detroit. It was a holdup at his transmission shop. And so every time I see the moon, I think of him, and I say, I see the moon and the moon sees me. It's just kind of my thing with my grandfather. And it was so beautiful. And I literally had my hands held in the air, and I was praising God for such a beautiful event with my team, our 25th anniversary. And I was just on top of the world. I was feeling great. And I was in about 8 inches of water. My companion was on the beach. He's not really a photo person. He's kind of a traditional Italian, just kind of, not really into the photo or the social media scene. So he starts taking photos of me because I was in my white pant cover up over my bathing suit. And he said the way my silhouette was with the moon was just so beautiful. And there was just something, very magical about it that he wanted to capture. So he began taking photos, and I started having seizures because my seizures are triggered by light and sound. And he was behind me and I was facing the moon. So he didn't realize that I was having these seizures. And I'm having these seizures. And when I have these seizures, my body locks up. Like I have no control over, I can't process anything, and I have no control, no bodily function control. And they only last about 30 to 90 seconds. They're pretty brief. And I don't have I have epilepsy, but I do not. And this is all new in the last 10 months. And they hadn't, I've been in and out of the doctors, but I hadn't had any serious testing to find out why. I was just kind of putting it off until my grand opening was done, and then I was going to deal with it then, right? Well, sometimes when you don't deal with things, sometimes it deals with you. And so I began having these seizures. My companion wasn't aware of it. And all of a sudden, this riptide comes in, and that's a thing in Delray Beach. It's a whole different element than here on the Great Lakes in Detroit, Michigan. And this riptide comes in, and it knocks me off my feet. And I'm in the process of having a seizure. And literally, he was taking photos. So it's like a flip book. You see me standing, and then all of a sudden, you see this big wave come in. He captures that. And the next thing I know, I'm down in the water. And he said there were 2 rain spouts, which if you Google Palm Beach rain spouts Thursday, August 22nd, you'll see they're pretty treacherous. I had never witnessed them. I didn't even see them. Like he saw everything, so this experience was very traumatizing for him. But for me, it wasn't traumatizing because I was in and out of seizure. I thought I was just swimming the whole time. Because if you can imagine, I'm having a seizure and my brain is locked up. So I don't know, I'm not aware of what's happening. Then all of a sudden I'm just swimming, and I think I'm just swimming because I'm above water and everything's fine. And next thing you know, I'm having another seizure. So I was in and out of seizure. So I went from seizure to drowning, and then swimming, and it was alternating. And he said, my companion, David, said he would see me come out of the water and start swimming, and then I would disappear. And this was happening, he said, for about 15 minutes. When the rain spouts came in, he said the tide had changed and ended up washing my body to shore. He came in and was able to grab me and pull me ashore, and I was already passed out by then. He said I was lifeless. I was just limp. And when he picked me up, it was just like Weekend at Bernie's. Like there was no life in me whatsoever. So he was already on the phone with 911. As soon as I disappeared the first time, he called 911. And he began CPR. They walked him through it. He said he had my phone, or his phone, on my stomach on speakerphone. And the 911 operator walked him through administering CPR. And I had no recollection of anything. The only thing I remember was swimming. And then the next thing I remember was that whole thing, which I never really believed was true, but seeing my life flash before my eyes. And it was quite extraordinary, because after my life flashed before my eyes, I saw my future. And I had an out-of-body experience. I could see David working on me. And it is the most incredible, unbelievable thing that ever happened to me in my life. And I knew I was at the right hand of God, because I had this pure love feeling. So you know how when you as a mother give birth and you have that pure love feeling and you hold your baby for the first time and it's just that pure love? I had that, but it was times 10, because think about this. I'm God's child. So it was the reverse. So I felt like God was just holding me, cradling me, like I was being rocked like a baby. And God told me in that moment, he said, Tabitha, I could have taken you, but I didn't. You know what that means? I'm not taking you. So no matter what is happening in your life, just know I'm not taking you. This is for something greater than you. This is your purpose. This is your testimony. This is something greater than you. So when David gave me CPR, I came out of it and rolled over and, vomited all the salt water out of my lungs. And I could see like 36 police fire rescue coming down the beach in Delray Beach. And I never looked to see if it was in the news or if they had, done a tidbit about it or anything. I don't know. I've just been processing for these last 8 weeks, and I've kind of lost track of time. So when he rolled me over and I was vomiting the salt water out, I see the police fire rescue coming down the beach, and they quickly get me on the bus. And I guess I had passed out again. They gave me CPR again, gave me the paddles and a nitroglycerin, and brought me back again. And through this whole discovery, I have been in and out of hospitals and doctors' offices for the last several weeks. I had a ambulatory EEG at home 24/7. It was pretty extreme, nothing I've ever dealt with before. And through that process, they discovered that I have a mass on my right cerebral, my mastoid. I have, and I don't think you and I discussed this last time. I think this is kind of new revelation. I have aneurysms, and I have bleeding on the brain. So everyone around me is scared. My executive assistant, my companion, my children, everyone around me is scared, but I already told them. God shared with me when I died that he's not taking me. So they need to remove faith, because God did not make us to have a heart full of fear. God made us to have faith that can move mountains, right? Faith of a mustard seed. Mm-hmm. And so, I share with my family that I am going to stay the course and get the medical help that I need, but I am not living in fear, and I'm not concerned or worried. I'm not going to live with worry. And I don't want them to either.
If there was one scripture in the Bible that is like Tabitha's scripture that resonates with you, what would it be?
I'm going to say that would be Isaiah 40:31. And that goes back to a story. It goes back to another time when I was challenged, did not die, but I was challenged, and I was diagnosed with RSD, and I lost the ability to walk, and I was told I would never walk again. And I reminded the doctor that his door says practice, and that that I'm going to put my faith in God and that I will walk again. And he said, well, you're going to need psychiatric care because you're obviously in denial. And I said, I'm from Southwest Detroit, born and raised on the streets. I am a realist. I am not in denial. I might be crazy, but that's another story. And, and so I went from, I did a lot of physical therapy, heliotherapy, magnetic therapy, Seraphim, Megan, endowment machine, any kind of stimulation that I could do to get my right side of my body working again. It's a unilateral disease. It's on the right side. It's regional sympathetic dystrophy. And I'll never forget, I was pretty positive throughout that whole process. But of course, once a week, I would have my pity party at home in my closet by myself, right? And then I'd cry and boohoo and then put my big girl panties on and go out in the world. And there was one time in particular where I just couldn't get it together. And I drove to the Grosio airport, which is where my office was. And I was at the seaplane base, which is my favorite place in all of Grosio. And there's like birds of, every kind and, egrets and just every kind of bird you can imagine. It's just beautiful. And there's lots of lily pads and frogs, and just the nature is just magical. And I always carry my Bible. It stays in my car so that I can take it into church with me. And then I have my Bible on my phone, which I use daily. And I grab my Bible and I do one of those, flip the pages, let them fall where they may, close my eyes and pick a verse. So I did that. And I was standing with my walker. And the verse was Isaiah 40:31. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. I was a little disciplined child of God, and I was so angry with God that was the verse that I received because I couldn't walk. And I was so angry, and I said some choice words I won't say here. And I just collapsed to the ground and was crying and just sobbing uncontrollably. And all of a sudden, in that moment, an eagle flew over my head, and I had never in my life seen an eagle in its natural habitat. And I knew that was God. I immediately started apologizing. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I'm disobedient. And I just really hyper-focused on healing and going through the physical therapy process. And literally within that week was Island Fest. It was in June, and they had Island Fest, which they have every June. It always lands on my birthday. And I had my first flight lesson. I said, okay, God, I can't walk. You want me to fly. I get it. I had my first flight lesson, and my flight instructor called me the next day. He said, Tabitha, and this is all Googleable. That's the crazy part about all my things is everything is Googleable. It's all God made me a testimony. He used me because I told him when I was younger that I'm the chosen one. And do you know who the chosen one is, Cindy? Those who choose to choose themselves. We all are chosen if we choose to choose ourselves. And I had my first flight instruction, and he called me up, my flight instructor, and he said, Tabitha, you moved me. He said, I forgot about God. I haven't talked to God since I was 18, since I almost killed that little boy because I was in the car driving uncontrollably in that little red Corvette. And I don't remember the year exactly. It's in my book, but I think it was 1965 or 67 red Corvette. He goes, when you were telling me your story, there was one behind you. And when you were telling me that God, how much God loves me, he said, there was a little red Corvette the same year behind me. And God put it on my heart when you told me that you had these heart conditions and that you may need a transplant because you have cardiomyopathy. He said, my dad was a recipient of an organ. And there was a plane that crashed yesterday, and the plane was driving from Wisconsin to Ann Arbor, and they crashed. The elevator failed on this airplane. There were 2 pilots, 4 medical personnel, and the organ that never made it to U of M hospital. So that means the individual waiting for the organ didn't make it either. So we lost 8 lives. And God put in my heart to have you fly this missing man mission. I said, I've only had one lesson. He said, it doesn't matter. God put it on my heart. And I haven't talked to God since I was 18, and I'm a 50-year-old man. So I want you to fly this missing man mission. It's a standard V formation. We line up like ducks in a row. And we're number 4. So we sit back and we get to see the whole formation. And we flew over Jackson Cemetery to honor these men that lost their lives. And I, again, felt like God rocked me and cradled me like a baby. And I was crying. And he said, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" While we were in flight, I was crying. And he said, he told me this poem called High Flight. And so I read the poem and I said, yes, that is exactly how I feel. And it's a beautiful poem that I encourage your listeners to look up. It is so beautiful. And again, it just felt like God cradled me and rocked me like a baby. So I've had quite a few God winks, but these are probably two of the most powerful ones that just kept me on my journey and rerouted my path so that I know exactly where I'm supposed to be and that I am on my right path.
That's awesome, Tabitha. Well, I'm so excited that you were able to share that story with our listeners, because God is still in the midst, right? No matter what's going on. Is it going to be always easy? No, but through the process, he always brings beauty from ashes, right? Like he always shows us there's more things happening than we see, right? And sometimes he allows us a peek behind the veil. So one last thing I'd love for you to share with our listeners: how can they go about connecting with you?
So I always say, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm pretty Googleable because I own Savvy Advertising Solutions and been in the business for 25 years. So my website is www.savvyadvertising.com. And I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram. So all social media forums, you can search Tabitha Mendez.
Well, thank you so much, Tabitha, for being on the God Wink today. You've been such a blessing to me, and I'm sure you're going to be a blessing to all who listen. And I wanted to tell our listeners that if today's podcast resonates with you, as always, please comment and share the podcast with those you know that would love to hear today's episode. And if you have a God wink yourself, we would love to have you come on and share your God wink stories. So feel free to click the link within our podcast notes to share your specific wink with us. So Tabitha, thanks again for joining me today on the God Wink podcast.
You are so welcome, Cindy. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Blessings to you.
I want to give a big thank you to Office Evolution Troy for providing their podcast studio for us this afternoon to record. If you have any questions or you would like to book your own time in their podcast studio, give them a call at 586-788-9966. If today's God Wink story really hit home with you, we would love to hear about it through the God Wink community on Facebook. If you know of someone that needs to hear today's God Wink story, show them some love and tag them on the God Wink podcast. You never know how a God Wink story might change their day around for the better. If you or someone you know has a God Wink story that the world needs to hear, we want to hear it. Simply click the link within the podcast notes to send in your God Wink story. Until next time, remember, God's got you. Wink, wink.